Knowledge is power.
Reality is. Just tell me maybe more about your show. Like maybe what's the vision of your show? What's it about? And then we can just dive in to whatever you want to talk about.
Yeah, of course. So it kind of started as basically a mental health podcast. And by that, I mean just kind of listening to people tell their story, listening to people kind of give their perspective on life and what they've gone through or what they know, and trying to kind of provide little useful pieces of information for listeners, because I was watching a lot of podcasts and listening to a lot of interviews and finding that random sentences, 58 minutes into a podcast would just be profound to me personally. So it's been that, and then kind of it expanded and grown. I interviewed a lot of just different types of artists, metal bands, lead singer of a metal band, rappers, carpenters, professional bodybuilders, authors, just all different types of people. So yeah, just basically everybody has, a unique, interesting perspective or view, and we could all kind of learn from it is kind of the premise.
Sounds good.
Yeah. So let's start with just kind of like a bio from you, just maybe kind of how you got into a lot of these subjects as well.
Yeah, so those philosophical subjects are things that I like to think about. I think I started my philosophy hobby or thinking about philosophy maybe 10 years ago. It's just, on the side, I love thinking about it. I love thinking through these questions. But my day job is as a software product manager. I work now at a fintech company. Just started a contract 2 weeks ago. So that's my day job. I work with developers to build software. And then I've got a side project or a side business where I make mobile apps for podcasters and content creators. So I reach out to podcasters, see if they want to have a conversation, but also tell them about my business. So that's what I do for my job, for my profession. And on the side, I love having deep conversations. I don't have enough of them. My wife is not too keen on having them with me. So whoever wants to have conversations on these topics, I am always ready and willing.
Yeah, I mean, you definitely went the brave route by just doing let's do podcasts together. Like that's pretty cool that you did that.
Yeah, it doesn't have to be a podcast, but I mean, I figured I'll reach out to podcasters who are also my target customers. So you kill two birds with one stone, just have a conversation, get to know you folks and see where the conversation goes.
That's brilliant. Okay, so what is it to you about philosophy and kind of questioning, our existence, why we're here, consciousness, any of these things? Like, what is it really about that triggers you that
I
you really
love
love?
the fact, well, I think when I went to grad school, for whatever reason, I it opened up to me the fact that there are so many hidden assumptions. We have so many beliefs that are just underneath everything and they're unexamined. So that was like the peek into it maybe 10 years ago now, like I said. But I love thinking through the what we call presuppositions or underlying assumptions that hold everything else up. And I don't think people think about them enough, but they're really important and really interesting when you think through what's the basis, the foundation, or the ground of a lot of our beliefs. And so we can dive into any of the ones that you want to.
Yeah, any and all of them. So what do you think? Like, is consciousness built through evolution? Do you think it's more panpsychism? Is it part of matter itself? Like what and why is consciousness a thing?
Yeah. So consciousness is really interesting. That ties into, I think, the free will thing. As I think about free will, and I think as people live their lives, the assumption is, and the working assumption is that it's a real thing. We do have free will. We make real decisions on our own. That's like the common sense assumption and working definition. I think people just assume. I also believe that we have genuine free will. We're making real decisions here. We're not robots. We're not determined by our um, the physical laws, right, going on in our brains. We're making real choices, and the choices, therefore, matter. We're responsible for those decisions, and we can go into morality as a consequence. But sticking with free will, I think Freedom, when I think about it in the way that we just talked about it, like genuine free will, it's not a part of nature. When I think about physics, the laws of physics and the laws of chemistry, there's no freedom involved there. There's cause and effect. We have the laws of nature, right? These are descriptions of the way physical reality behaves. You can't break the laws of nature; they break you. It's like the word law is a kind of a misnomer there, but it's just the way things are. Um, and that leads me to believe, like, if we do have genuine free will, we're making real decisions, real choices, then that's something that's outside of physical reality. It's something different. Um, one step further, as I think about freedom, is I think freedom is necessary for rationality. So when we say we believe something um, on rational grounds, or like, let's say I believe in something based on the evidence I see, I'm making a choice there. I'm choosing to believe something because of good reasons and the evidence that I've gathered. That's a choice, and that's what makes it reasonable. That's what makes it rational. So if I didn't have a choice, if free will was an illusion, or it's just like a useful fiction or something, then all of my beliefs, by definition, wouldn't be rational. Even the belief that I don't have genuine free will. I don't know if you followed that last step, but it's
Yeah.
like circular. When I think about that, it's the belief that your free will, the belief that you don't have free will, and your free will is irrational, your free will is um, not genuine. That belief in itself is irrational, and therefore, I think that belief, you can't hold that belief. You can't justify holding that belief logically. I don't know.
Right, right. Okay, so when it as far as our pool to pull from, like the series of choices that we have. So Sam Harris kind of has uh, uh, a practice or something that he's done on podcasts or conversations where he basically asks the person, say like, think of a mammal,
Mm,
first thing that pops in your head, whatever it is. And then he's like, so why didn't you think of, say, a giraffe? Why didn't you think of a gorilla? Whatever it
mm,
is. Just thinking of the bank of animals that we happen to know of because of our
mm.
experience, because of what we've seen, because of what we've heard.
Yeah,
We only have like a pool to pull from. We only
yeah.
have like a box of experiences
Mhm.
up until this point to
Mm,
a grab bag of prior experiences. So I didn't have,
mhm,
if you were to say say you chose giraffe, for
mhm,
example, and you had never heard of a gorilla, you'd never seen a
mhm,
gorilla, you didn't know it
mhm.
existed, you didn't
Yeah,
have the free will to pull gorilla if you didn't
true.
know that it existed.
Yeah,
What do you think
true.
about that?
You don't have the free will. Well, I guess, I mean, that makes sense to me. Yeah, you don't have the freedom to choose an option you're not aware of. That seems fine
Yeah.
to me. Like, yeah, we don't know everything. We only know a little bit of what's out there, and but we can choose. So that's interesting. So the first thought that comes to your head, yeah, I don't think there's a choice involved there. I don't think everything we do is free. So the first thought that I got was dolphin. I
Yeah.
didn't choose that; it just came up. So I don't think there's choice involved there. And yeah, I agree. Like, you don't have the choice to choose something you're not even aware of. It's not even in the pool of your experience or content. So
Right. Yeah, yeah. 'Cause Sam Harris kind of talks like that, and it makes me think because I hadn't thought about it until he said something. It
mm,
does make me think. It is kind of it's kind of a zooming in unnecessarily in a weird way because it's like, okay, of course we weren't talking about the things that we haven't experienced. So it almost is when I feel like the way that you talk about free will is just based off of it's of course only based off of our experiences because that's what we're
mhm,
trying to answer, right? We're not
yeah,
we're talking about our lived experience and if we have free will within our own limits, which of course
yeah.
we're in our own limits. That's how we're
Mhm.
even to the point of the conversation.
But I think what's fascinating about that example is there are so many things in our lives that we have no control over, so many thoughts. Like, just think about your interests. I think Jordan Peterson talks about this all the time. Did you choose your interests?
Mm,
I don't think so. I mean,
mm,
we have an affinity toward things and activities, topics.
right.
I don't think I had a choice in that. Like, he says, like, do you choose your interests or do your interests choose you?
Ooh, I like
I
that.
think I think they choose us in a way. Like, yeah. Anyway, I didn't control it. You can't choose to love
Yeah,
anybody, or like fall in love with anybody. I think that just happens to you. And there,
right.
so I feel like probably most of our experiences are not, they're not rational choices, decisions. They're just happening to us.
Right. Yeah. Yeah. And then we're trying to piece together the puzzle. Our ego is just trying to form, like, here's why it happened. And yes, of course, I love this. I made this decision.
Mm.
Yeah. It kind of is interesting because it's not, say you fall in love with dancing at a young age and you're
Mhm.
7 years old. It's not like when you were 6, you were saying to yourself, I'm going to fall in love with dancing next year. You don't plan it. You just have an experience one whole day of you just seeing someone dancing, or you watched it on TV, or you heard about
Mhm.
it, whatever, something that makes you kind of attached to the thing that,
Mhm.
like, that you're interested in. You know,
Yeah.
that is very that it's very intriguing because yeah, yeah, really thinking if our interests choose us,
Mhm.
it does kind of see, because so, okay, so what do you think about determinism? So along with kind of the contrast of free will, because I
Mhm.
think maybe there's a little bit of a mix of both of that are possible. What do you think?
Mhm. I mean, I think um, the physical reality is determined. If you're just talking about molecules in motion, that seems to me determined by the laws of physics and the laws of nature. The interesting thing is, like, we human beings are in nature, and if we have free will, like genuine free will, then we're like this. Um, we're an element of indeterminism within a determined universe. That seems to me to jive with what I hear is going on in quantum physics. I think there are elements of indeterminism within physical reality or descriptions of physical reality. So it's probably a combination, right? In quantum physics, like physical laws seem to be determined, but there are elements of indeterminism within it. So the reality is probably both, and we just don't understand how to put them together,
Mm,
but they seem to be together. Like, human beings are in a physically determined universe. If we have free will, then we're, yeah, agents of indeterminism,
right.
and yet um, we're embedded and what's the word? Yeah, we're living inside of a physically determined universe. So
Yeah. So
I'm
what is
not
it?
sure
We
how to.
we have free will within a box or something.
Yeah, and that seems to be like, it's not unusual. Like, we have games, right? We play chess. There's freedom within
Mhm.
the confines of the rules of the game. So, like, that seems to be a common thing across different domains.
Yeah, I mean, and maybe it is. We're always kind of looking for structure amongst chaos. And we're innately looking for patterns, and we can kind of exist and live within those patterns. So the patterns are the rules on the chessboard. You can or cannot, yes or no, hard line, yet
Mm.
do or do not these things, and it creates a structure that we can actually play the game within. And maybe we're
Yeah,
kind of doing that same thing with life.
I think so. Yeah, because, like, the laws of nature, you can't go outside the laws of nature. You can't break them. They're gonna
Yeah,
break you, right?
yeah.
So those are the restraints of the game.
So
But there's a lot of choice. Yeah.
do you think we will ever, just as a thought experiment, do you think we'll ever break outside of any of our laws? Do you think we'll ever have any sort of, because I think, like with the quantum physics, the, the quantum physics stuff is so fascinating, and I know this is kind of a ridiculous jump, but like the Marvel universe, they talk about all this different dimension stuff. It really kind
Mm.
of like pokes where we're at with science anyway, and it
Mhm.
does kind of make me think that maybe there is a way in which humans could jump, whatever that means,
Mm.
forward in consciousness, or evolution, or some sort of jump from whatever it was that went from monkeys to us. Maybe
Mm.
there could be another thing like that, some sort of jump, and it's
Yeah.
something to do with our with our current reality kind of changing. Have you thought about any of that at
I
all?
think there are more dimensions than we are capable of perceiving. I think that's just a fact, right? Like we can't hear above or beyond certain frequencies. We can't see, right, above or beyond certain of the visual spectrum. So our physical organs, just by the nature of what they are, we're seeing only a slice of reality. There's a lot more that we're just not perceiving. There's so much going on that we're just not aware of. So yeah, I can see us like expanding our sense capabilities to perceive beyond what we can now,
Yeah.
whether that happens through technology or some other mechanism, like you said, evolution. Maybe our brains will evolve or change in a way that we can perceive more than we can now. I think that's,
Yeah.
I mean, that's happened, right? Like with microscopes, we can see, and telescopes, we see far more than we could with the naked eye.
Hmm.
Maybe in that's an analogy of what can happen in the future.
Right. Yeah. Like our tools do kind of just become extensions of us. They're kind of like, they're just a way of reaching our arms to be a little bit longer
Hmm.
into what humans are capable of doing. Yeah, yeah, that's super interesting. It's also very interesting to think about the contrast with zooming in really, really far, and then we zoom out really, really far to see, and it just continuously expands, right? No matter which way we go, it just continues to expand. Or like as the technology gets better, the deeper we can go, the farther out we can look. It's so interesting.
Yeah, it's amazing. It seems like there's no limit to um, what there is to discover. Um, I mean, yeah, from the very small to the size of the universe. I still can't get my head around the fact that I mean the universe has a size, and there, it is expanding. Um, yeah, so that's kind of beyond what I can comprehend.
Right, because our brain, we hear a billion or we hear a trillion or we hear infinity and we're like, yeah, man, that's a lot. And but really our brain doesn't, of course we can't comprehend that. We don't really think of, wow, what is a billion of something, or what is what does infinity really mean for something to go on forever? Like our brains don't really have a experiential understanding of it. So,
Yeah, so that kind of leads me to this thought. Um, so, assuming that we've evolved, right? Uh, our brains, our bodies are adapted for survival in a particular environment. Let's just say like uh, the plains of Africa. Like we all human beings, let's say, originated from Africa, and so our bodies haven't changed in the however many thousands of years that we've become human beings. So we're like evolved for a particular environment. It seems to me so strange and fascinating that the brain of a primate, the body and brain of a primate that's evolved in this particular environment is able to comprehend the the size of the universe, quantum physics, um, advanced mathematics that I have no idea. Like there's so creativity, making music and businesses. Like it seems unreal that um, yeah, that the brain evolved for that particular natural environment could do all this. And I feel like why trust the brain? Why trust, let's just say, the primate brain? Why would you trust the primate brain um, so outside of its natural element, exploring abstract concepts that are so far removed from what it was adapted for, which is survival within that particular natural environment? Why trust any of these things that we're thinking up?
right.
So for me, I feel like you might call it like the naturalistic um, explanation for consciousness, maybe. Um, there's something like it undermines it somehow. I feel like there's less justification to trust the deliverances of our cognitive faculties on that evolutionary view. Um, I don't know if that made sense. Like,
Yeah, yeah. So why? Yeah, basically, why would it seems obvious why it's important to give time and effort into not getting eaten by a lion or finding food to eat. Keeping alive, survival. So like the jump from survival to looking up at the stars and wondering where you are in comparison to that, and wondering what that is, and wondering what you are. Like what that what is that? That awareness, I guess. Like where does awareness come from, and why does it come? It's have you ever heard of the stoned ape theory?
oh, is that something to do with like taking psychedelic substances?
Yeah, yeah.
But I don't know the full thing.
Yeah, yeah. So Terrence McKenna talks about it. Essentially, we're apes living in trees,
Hmm.
surviving that way, and then after a while, we end up getting out of the trees, or something brings us out of the trees for whatever reason, and we start looking for food on the ground, hunting more, whatever. We're away from the trees, and we start following cows, flipping over cow pies, looking for food. Start
Okay.
noticing that's where in manure is where psychedelics grow.
Mm.
And then we realized because of survival, there's certain little subtle things that psychedelics, like magic mushrooms, for example, would give you better visual acuity.
Mm.
So this makes you better at hunting.
Mm.
It would potentially connect your tribe more in different ways. They probably had some sort of like orgy situation when it came to these apes when they were doing all these
Mm.
psychedelics.
Sure.
So basically, it kind of like had all these positive effects as far as keeping a group of apes together.
Mm.
And so over hundreds of thousands of years or whatever it is, they continued to follow behind
Mhm.
bulls and cows, and flip over the
Yeah.
manure, and take psychedelics, and that's kind of how consciousness started to form. They started realizing things, started having language, started noticing that when they would eat food here and throw the seeds on the ground, when they come back a year later in season, there'd be crops
Yeah.
growing.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then they start having a memory bank to kind of build those things on. So that's kind of the stoned ape
Yeah.
theory of sorts.
I mean, when I hear that, it's a nice story,
Dang.
but I
You
don't
don't buy it, huh?
I don't feel like that's at all plausible. I mean, it's a story.
Well, so what do you think it is? Like, what do you think? What is the birth of consciousness to you then? Do you have
Yeah.
any?
Let me think about language for a little bit. I thought a little bit
Okay.
about language. When I think about what language is, and I have a son, like a 6-year-old boy now. Wow, just the work it takes to teach a language to a child, it's an enormous amount of effort and time to teach language to someone who doesn't have a language. Um, so to imagine a situation where a language could somehow evolve from nothing, I think is an insurmountable gap. For one, so given the implausibility of a language coming from nothing, um, and just another example of that is like when we look at the animal kingdom, there are communication systems, like birds have chirping systems, signals, and all this. But I think when people analyze the way animals communicate compared to the way human beings communicate through language, I think there's a fundamental difference between a language and these signaling systems. So when I think about what a language is and the fact that new languages are always born out of existing languages, um, I think that I think language needs to pre-exist. There has to be a language before any new languages can come to be. And that language, whatever that new language is, it has to be taught. Like parents have to teach their kids how to speak the language of their society. And so there's like an enormous amount, like I said, of investment, time, effort, patience that goes into anyone acquiring a language. So like I'm a Christian, so when I think about like the Bible and God being described as in the beginning was the word, I was like, whoa, that's
Mm,
interesting. In the beginning was language, and he's described as like our father. Wow, I wonder if Adam and Eve were like these uh, apes or primates, humans, Homo sapiens, and God had to adopt them and teach them language. Like the enormous amount of investment and time and love it takes to teach language to a primate. Maybe the primate had the cognitive capabilities. I'm sure like you and I do, right? We have the cognitive capability to pick up language. Um, the faculties are there, but language acquisition doesn't just happen. It takes a relationship, and it takes a loving relationship for that to happen. And so yeah, that's my position is um, yeah. In the beginning was language. In the beginning was the word,
right.
and that's the beginning of consciousness. So once you have language, then you have consciousness. Because I don't think you can be self-aware without the word I. If you don't have the word I in whatever language you've
Mhm.
acquired, I don't think you have self-consciousness, you have self-awareness. Like they're tied together.
Right.
The word and the self-awareness, I think, are tied together.
So I
What do you
kind of
think?
I kind of think that the I was formed from still this same survival technique. I think that when there's some sort of apes hunting, um, or whatever, we're essentially we're going to do things that are going to increase our chances of survival, right? We're going to do things like I was saying, how the psychedelics would increase the chances of people working together, or apes working together and whatnot, their visual acuity. I think after a while we would probably have to start pointing. If you're on a hunt, you're hunting a boar, you're a group of 8 apes and you're hunting a boar. I have no idea if they actually hunt boar or how this works, but eventually, hundreds and hundreds of years, you would start to notice and pick up, I think, when you do this with your finger. You take your hand. This thing is called a hand. They wouldn't know it. They haven't labeled it yet, but they are
Mm,
moving a part of their limbs and pointing over there, or they're
mm,
gesturing, or they're they're indicating. We're
mm,
using our body's verbal language,
mhm,
and
mhm,
and then that after a while, after a long time, starts to form words because we start to label things. We start to point. We start to
mhm,
say, like something that indicates good or bad, danger, food. There's a lion or there's a boar, whatever it is. So we're pointing over more and more years. We start pointing. This is banana. We start making different mouth noises to indicate the survival thing has now gone on to long-term survival in this scenario. I'm not sure, but and then eventually what had to happen, if we're labeling things for survival. This is good or this is
mm,
bad. Here's where the water is. Here's where you put the seeds. You go over here. Eventually we have to start doing we point at each other. Now we have a name. Now we have when I point at you, you're a thing. And that's kind of the birth of the ego. That's kind of the birth of the I in a lot of ways. What do you think
mm.
about that?
I think again, it's a story.
Yeah.
I don't think there are any examples we can point to validate that story.
Yeah.
There are,
It's
we
not like they
have.
were they were writing that down at that point, obviously.
I mean,
It's not
there
like there's
are so many animals in the world, right?
mm,
And we're the only ones. Why should it be that we are the only ones? If that story is plausible, if that progression is plausible, why are human beings the only ones that have developed language? Um, the gorillas have been around for as long as we have, right? Every other animal has been around as long as human beings have.
hmm
If that process you've just described is a natural process, then I would expect to see other animals having gone that route.
yeah.
But
Or at least
yeah, there
similar,
are no other examples.
because we're so far, we really are so far away from all other animals. We're not just at the top of the food chain. We've left the food chain. We're not
Yeah,
like we have
we've left
power over
orbit.
all the other animals. So
Yeah,
it is very interesting, right? Like why
yeah,
would humans or the thing after apes be chosen in such
yeah.
way?
Biologically, we're not very different from. We're very similar, right? 99 what percent of our DNA is exactly the same as a chimpanzee, right? So there's nothing. really biologically that different from us to other animals, other life. But yeah, we've left orbit. Like we've left um, the orbit of the animal kingdom, and I think language is like the primary differentiator. Um,
So you believe that so you believe that there was like you said there was the word. So what would you say like how did God learn the word? Like how does he know the word? Not
yeah,
maybe not who taught it to him, but like what is that? Like why does that exist? Why would God
mm,
exist with the word to give it to us even then?
yeah. I feel like the definition of God that um, I'm working with is he is this pre-existent
Mm.
consciousness. So he is the origin of consciousness, the origin of language. He is the word. He
Oh,
is language. It's yeah, it's pretty abstract at that point, but like there's nothing before him, right? He is God. He's the
yeah.
ultimate reality. And if and the ultimate reality, if my view is correct, the ultimate reality is conscious. The ultimate reality is personal. The ultimate reality is loving. Like all these attributes of God um, describe ultimate reality. Whereas other worldviews, like let's say Buddhism, ultimate reality is unconscious and impersonal, right? So it's a very clear distinction between worldviews um, that I hold.
Yeah. Yeah, I find that I'm pretty fascinated by really all of the different religious beliefs and how we came to all of our different beliefs, how different cultures had for so long believed in so many different things, and then they shifted or whatever. It's all just so fascinating. I always try to wonder, what are they all kind of pointing at? You know, like maybe we have different language, maybe we have different words for it, but like, what is this thing within humans that we have some sort of desire for a higher power, for meaning, for purpose, for
Mhm.
direction,
Yep.
for and then also the fact that for whatever strange reason, love and kindness and joy and all these like good positive emotions seem to
Mhm.
connect us closer to that feeling of meaning, of purpose. It is there's no denial that love and God are so intertwined.
I think in our Western uh, societies, we tie God and love together because of the Christian tradition and heritage in the West. I don't think that's true in other geographies, other traditions. But I yeah, when you talk about purpose and meaning, I think that is universal. I think it's proven. I just finished a book called "Man's Search for Meaning" by Viktor Frankl. Have you heard of this one?
Yeah, yeah.
It's a pretty famous one, I think. Viktor Frankl was a psychiatrist who was in Auschwitz, and he lived through that, and he wrote a book about that just right after he got out of it. But that's just one book. Um, no one can live without a purpose, without a sense of purpose. You will die. You will kill yourself if you don't have a sense of purpose. People don't think about it very much, but um, I think that's a fact. Like without hope, everything becomes meaningless and we die. So it's not a hope. It seems to be like a survival mechanism. It's an adaptation that, if it is an adaptation, it helps us survive. I think it's fascinating to realize that we all think of ourselves as the hero of our own story. We live inside a story. We just do. We are the main character in our own stories. Everyone else has their own stories. We fit everything into like a meta story. So I think story is something also really embedded within our human being. So thinking narratively, thinking ourselves as heroes within our own stories. Um, I think all pointing to the fact that there is an ultimate story, and our lives do matter within that big story. And it is like even the word history has the word story in it.
His story. Yeah.
Um, we can't help it. It's the way we are. We structure things into stories. What I mean, I think that points to the fact that there is an ultimate story, there is a meta narrative, and we are living into it.
Mhm.
But that only makes sense, I think, from a theistic worldview where there is a God, he is the author, the creator, he has a plan for not just our lives individually, but a plan for the entire human race. There
Mhm.
is a structure, a story structure to this whole thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I like that. I like that. Thinking along the lines of like Jordan Peterson's lectures, he talks about, he kind of gives us the examples of how we live through a hero's journey. And he gives examples, I think, through like Lion King and Peter Pan.
Mm.
I'm not sure if you've listened to those lectures. If
Yeah, I
not,
have.
oh yeah, awesome, cool. Yeah, it's been a while since I've touched on those, but I remember really liking those. And I like to think about, you know, what is the reason why, the Marvel movies are so popular right now? What is the reason why we do love Disney so much? I think it's because they really are speaking to something within each of us.
Mhm.
It's hard to quantify and explain it with a capital T truth of like,
Mhm.
this is something that is 100% true amongst all humans,
Mm.
when it comes to like us needing some sort of purpose or story that we're following, or following
Mhm.
some sort of hero's journey.
Mhm.
um, but it's man, it really does seem to be true.
Mhm.
People's lives are a lot more fulfilling when they feel as if they have some sort of sense of purpose or meaning within their own scope. Do you think
Yeah.
that a lot of what we're going through, our depression rates are crazy high right now? There's a lot of, you know, there's a lot of like kind of madness going on in some ways, right now. Do you think a lot of people are kind of living without purpose right now?
Yeah, I think so. And so the book I'm reading was written in like 1947, and the author was saying even back then he there was a survey. I think it said like maybe 60% or 70% of the people that were surveyed back then felt like there was no one or nothing that they would die for.
Mm.
So like the meaning problem was a problem back then. I'm sure it's even worse now. People um, people need meaning. They need a purpose, but it's hard to find one to hold on to for your entire life. And I think as we get older and I think naturally we do have short-term purposes. Like when we're young, we're going after different things. But as we pursue those things over the years, and as we get older and older, um, those things tend to lose their grip on us, and we begin to question: Are we, climbing up the wrong ladder? Are we pursuing the wrong things? And then when you get to that point of your thinking, then a lot of people feel lost. Like, okay, then what am I? What should I be living for? What is my purpose? And the more questions you ask at that point, I think the more confusing things can get. Um, but I think for most people that they grow up within a tradition. So if you grow up within a Muslim tradition, for example, or a Hindu tradition, or it's religion for the most part, right? If you grow up within a Christian tradition, those questions tend to be answered for you from your tradition. You can adopt them more readily. You want to question them and make them your own, but there's a set of answers there for you to consider. I think a lot of people, as they become atheist or lose their religion and like break away from their traditions, it becomes a lot harder because there isn't some ready set of um, values and purposes you can kind of consider. If you're an atheist, then there really is no long-term purpose. That's just a brute fact. There is no purpose to your life ultimately. There's no purpose to the human race ultimately. The universe itself is going to um, experience a heat death, right? Nothing matters on that worldview. So it can be very depressing if you think about that for too long. And so I don't think people tend to want to think about that.
Mhm. Yeah, yeah. I mean, I do find when there is this innate feeling of nihilism that kind of takes over when you really you just have this, everything's meaningless, my life's meaningless, we're all gonna die, blah, blah, blah. It's like there's like a flip side of it that really can bring your life. It makes you see the joy and beauty that you already have, you know, and it is kind of like, okay, yeah, yeah, maybe this is a short sliver of life, but that is it, like what a gift then. What a gift it is that you know, this infinite universe, this infinite um, solar system, this, you know, all this crazy time that we're alive within all of times, is we're just a blip on the radar as far as we
Mhm.
know. But isn't that awesome? Isn't that amazing? Like what a gift to be able to be just a blip on the radar.
Mm.
Um, do you think you had mentioned morality at the beginning as well? What do you gain out of having sense of morality, values? I
Mhm.
feel like I didn't. I kind of had like a spiritual awakening, you know, basically just being able to admit to myself that there's something bigger than my own dang ego, you know.
Mm.
So I kind of had this. I don't think that I had as many stern values or morals or realized when, like, you know, like if you lie or you say something dishonest or you say something hurtful, it actually hurts you later on. It's kind of that hell that's inside
Mhm.
of you, you know, the
Mm.
reactions to living without values and morals, that sort of thing.
Mhm.
When that kind of sparked within me, it gave me, oh yeah, values and morals are actually important. It is kind of good to have bumpers up on your life and give yourself a little bit of a
Mhm.
direction at what you're facing. How
Mhm.
do you,
Mhm.
John, like, how do values and morals and these sorts of things help you in your life?
I think the moral laws are objective, and I think they're normative. So, meaning we are obligated to obey them. So, I thought about this actually last weekend. I was thinking about the different kinds of laws there are in the universe. So, at at the top, I thought of stuff like logical laws. There are laws of logic and laws of mathematics. 2 + 2 = 4. It's a law of arithmetic. Um, these laws are uh, rules for proper thinking. So they're like they're within the abstract realm. You can break them, but you can only break them by accident. So I think of the example like if you don't know that 2 + 2 = 4, you can make a math error. You can put 5 there. But once you understand that 2 + 2 = 4, um, and you believe that to be true, it is impossible from that point forward for you to believe anything else. Like you can't break that law of logic once you understand it. Like knowing it pretty much binds you to it. You can try as much as you like to believe that 2 + 2 = 2000. You're not going to be able to break that law. So that was one area of law I was thinking about. Um, they exist. Um, you can break them, but only by accident. And then at the bottom, I was thinking about like the laws of nature. And I don't like the word law, but like these are descriptions of physical, the behavior of the physical world. They're just descriptive. You can't break them. Um, you're never going to break the law of gravity, right? If you try to, it's gonna break you. So there's no um, breaking the laws of nature. And in the middle, it's funny, like we live in the space between the heavens and the earth. Like we live in that middle space. And I was thinking about the laws of morality are so interesting because they connect the abstract realm with the physical realm. Because the laws of morality are both rules for proper thinking and rules for proper acting. They're like both and they live in like this middle space where we live. We live in the middle space between our abstract thinking world and the world of acting and behavior.
Mm.
So I was thinking about that, and yeah, like the rules of morality, the laws of morality are unique in that you can know what the right thing is to do, and you can consciously disobey it. You can break that. Like you can know something is true, and then you can also disobey it. You can break it. So it's unlike the laws of logic. It's unlike the laws of physics. It's pretty special. It's
Mhm.
it's there in the middle. It's where we live. Um, and then going back to like thinking about free will, since we do have free will, assuming we do have free will, the genuine capacity to make choices, when we disobey a moral law, when we break it, we become guilty. And I think
Mm.
that that word guilt, uh, I think again, it kind of all ties back to freedom. Guilt is only real when when you have the freedom to break a moral law. And so the whole concept of guilt um, is only possible because we have genuine freedom. And then guilt leads to punishment, right? If you break the laws of America, you are then liable to being arrested, judged, sentenced, right? Punished for that. So all of these concepts around being guilty and then receiving some kind of punishment or reward for our behavior all kind of ties back to freedom as well. How does it help me in my life? Um, so again, I think worldview plays a big part here. I think a lot of different worldviews view the moral law of their tradition as laws of proper behavior, right? And like if you do these things and follow these laws, at the end of your life, God will weigh you in the scales of His righteousness, and if your good deeds outweigh your bad deeds, then you get to go to the heaven. If your bad deeds outweigh your good deeds, then you go to hell. So and that's kind of also related to what you just said. Like you said, you've discovered that following these moral laws in the end come back to reward me, come back to help me. It's almost like an adaptive thing. It's self-serving. To be a good person also helps me live a better life, maybe a more successful, more happy life. So I find within that view, it still kind of turns around and ends in self-interest. Like to do a good thing because it helps me in the end is still in the end self-interested. It's still kind of selfish. If I were to walk an old lady across the street because I thought, you know what, in the end, God's gonna give me brownie points, or in the end, this is gonna come back to me in some good way. You're doing that kind of for self-interested reasons. And so there's something off-putting about that for me. I think um, what the Christian worldview says is we do good not because it's going to buy us some reward or come back to us in some positive way. We obey these laws of morality. We obey God's law because um, um, it's like an expression of thanksgiving almost. It's an expression of the fact that He loves us and He's already forgiven us of all our guilt. We don't have to earn our way to being right with Him. It's just we're doing these things for purely for others now. I can walk that lady across the street, not because it's going to come back to me in some good way, or not because I'm going to get brownie points or go to heaven because I do that. I can walk that person across the street or do any good deed because I want to help that person. It's completely other focused. It's not self-interested. So those are some thoughts around morality. Maybe you can respond to any of those.
Yeah, yeah, those are all nice, man. Yeah, there really is something special about stepping outside of ourselves and our own, we all have our own level of constant neuroticism of some sorts, I think, So when we step outside of ourselves and we can be of service to someone else, service to others, not to our own ends, if things do happen, you do this nice thing and it ends up having something else come back to you. That's a plus. That's not, you don't think about the reward, right? That's just something that if it happens, it happens. That's awesome, but you're not doing it to score those brownie points, like you said. Um, John, we are getting kind of up here in time, and I feel like we could talk for hours, honestly, but I do have to get going to work here in not too long. So I do want to round the corner a little bit. I was just kind of thinking of a good question to ask you. You contemplate a lot of these things. It seems like you said you enjoy philosophy. You like thinking about these things. You like not only contemplating them, but you're also you're a father. You're a businessman. If you had to maybe talk back to your 18-year-old self, your 20-year-old self, or even just someone like him, if any of the listeners maybe are that age, they're younger, if you had some like blanket statement advice of how to see the world, how to live, what to do, what not to do you have anything that pops to mind?
Yeah, I mean, what pops to mind is don't do things because you think it's the thing everyone else is doing. Like I went to college right after high school. I probably shouldn't have gone to college right out of high school. I probably should have worked, um, grown emotionally, socially, um, made money, like been more independent, just grown as a person before I decided to commit to a 4-year education somewhere in a major that was going to be relevant to my career. So I think if I were to talk to myself at 18, I'd say don't go right into school. Work for a couple of years, figure yourself out, discover what your interests are, like your real interests. Explore those, and then if you decide to go back to school, choose something that you really want to study, so you don't waste your time and money in school studying something that you're not really interested in. And yeah, also I didn't have a work ethic, so like going to school without a work ethic, you're trying to build a work ethic while being in school, it's difficult, right?
Yeah.
You don't know why you're there, like, so I guess take the time to discover your purpose, discover your interests, and try to make decisions in your life that get you closer to your purpose, and then you'll save a lot of time and a lot of money, um, like floundering. Yeah, I took a lot of my 20s just kind of floating, um, not knowing what I wanted to do with my life. I, I don't regret I don't regret a lot of that, but if I were to go back, I'd want to get clarity earlier on so I can make more progress in the time that um, I've had.
Yeah. Yeah, yeah. I think that's a pretty good answer, man. It's basically just, yeah, find yourself, see what you want even before you just decide on something that's so, puts you into so much debt too, for sure.
Oh,
I
yeah.
think it would have been kind of cool to, as soon as I turned 18, to just, just sell everything that's too big to fit into a van and just go travel around for a few years, you know. I mean, obviously that's the pipe dream, daydream, and it's a little bit more complicated than that, but it really would. I mean, being a young age and just learning about the world through that lens, and just being humble enough to sleep in your car or whatever it is for a little while, you probably learn a lot about yourself and what you want and what you don't want, you know.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, people can get to these insights, I think, in a lot of different ways. There's no like, yeah, no one right way to discover yourself. Um, but yeah, taking the time and being intentional about it, I think, is worth it when you're young.
Yeah.
Yeah, and like don't feel pressured to live up to the expectations and the expectations of your parents or family or friend group or whatever culture. Like we're living inside expectations all the time, but I think that can be oppressive. And so just, yeah, I mean, it helps me, even though it's kind of morbid, to realize that life is really short, and there just isn't enough time to be worrying about living up to other people's expectations. You want to find, well, I want to find my purpose, and I think I have now, and I want to live into my purpose as fully as I can every day. And I mean, and that's it. It brings a lot of just simplicity to my thought life and just my normal life, my day to day. And yeah, life is short. We don't know how much time we have left, and it's going to be shorter than you expect. It's going to be shorter than I expect. It's always the case, whether I'm 60 or 70 or 80 or 90. It's always going to be shorter than I expect, I think. So,
Mm. Yeah, man. Beautifully said. Beautifully said. I appreciate your time, and I appreciate all of your answers and in your inquiries. You know, I like that we're able to kind of both kind of think through some thoughts and have an unstructured, good conversation, man. So really, thank you again for being willing to do this.
thanks, Jacob. Thank you for the opportunity, and let's do it again anytime.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Sounds good, man. We'll be in touch via email and whatnot, and we'll get together again.
Okay, sounds good.
All
Take
right.
care.
Yeah. Take care,
Bye.
listeners. Take care of yourself. Drink some water. Stretch. Love yourself, and we'll see you later. Have a good one. See you, John.
At what age do we learn how to have better conversations? At what age do we learn to have better conversations with ourselves?
knowledge is power.